Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of What If Civilization Started Over. This is going to be a very big episode, probably the biggest of the series. As you can see, we have two parallel wars that are going on, and they're not going to interact much except for one event that'll happen about halfway through the episode. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the first half of the Eastern War, then the first half of the Western War, then we're going to do an event in India that'll affect both wars. Then we're going to do the second half of the Eastern War, then the second half of the Western War, and then a surprise event at the end of the episode. So that's what this episode's going to be comprised of. So with that, let's get right into the first half of the Eastern War. So as we said last time, the Philippines started an invasion into Japan, and therefore Japan's alliance is going to declare war on the Pink Alliance, and Japan is going to be the most aggressive as they immediately start invading into Manchuria, and they're successful because they're a lot stronger than Manchuria. Manchuria's main feats are usually diplomatic, like they can kind of convince countries to switch sides, but most countries have already dug in their heels, and this is like after a lot of diplomacy has already taken place, so the sides of the war are probably not going to change. And so Japan is just like having a field day in Manchuria, basically just taking all of their land. Japan's colony here is not very defended, so it will allow Yellow and Yangtze to take it. And then basically the next thing that happens is that invasions will commence into... I'm just going to call these guys West Yellow. West Yellow River Valley. And they are getting... Essentially, they are getting jumped, is the word that is often used in this scenario. And they're getting jumped by basically the entire Pink Alliance as they want to divide these guys up. But they are getting supported by Central Yangtze, as North China will start an invasion into Yangtze to try and distract them. But then China will start an invasion, and the Philippines will help them with this, into North China, starting to even surround the capital of North China, forcing North China to retreat, and allowing Yangtze to start an invasion into Central Yangtze. However, then West China will invade into China. I'm going to turn off alliances. West China will start an invasion into China as they almost take China's capital before China gets their act together and starts pushing them back. However, they do have this front being invaded into, as they have been forced to withdraw a little bit from North China, who is therefore going to start another invasion into Yangtze, but a much less successful one. Vietnam is currently in this front of the war. Things have been a little bit too separate from the rest of the war, and the Purple Alliance is taking advantage of this, as North India is focusing on taking out East India since they're stronger than them. And Burma and North Burma think, hey, what a perfect opportunity to... start an invasion into North India while they weren't expecting it. However, the problem for them is that Vietnam is here, and they're like one of the strongest countries on... They're the second strongest country on the purple team, in fact. They will seize these islands. And right now Indonesia is remaining neutral, and they probably will remain neutral the whole war. But Burma is... They were expecting Vietnam, but they just weren't ready. Like, they're expecting them, but they weren't ready for them, if you understand what I mean. And these guys are trying to invade China, but they're also invading into North Burma. And in general, this front is not going very well for the Pink Alliance, who should have been more prepared. Despite the Philippines technically being the leader of the Pink Alliance, they're not actually the strongest country there. That would be Mongolia. And so Mongolia will start helping out Manchuria because Manchuria desperately needs the help, and that'll allow them to push them all the way to Japan all the way to the southern tip of Sakhalin, as well as take back a large portion of the Russian Far East, pushing Japan back to a few cities with a very undefendable front line as they try pushing in, but Japan actually manages to push them back out, as this is what the front line looks like here. However, Mongolia has a majority of their forces consolidated in western Yellow River Valley, as this will be the first country to fall in the war, falling very early on. And forces are now getting pushed into central Yangtze, with Yellow River Valley also pushing in, as well as Yangtze River Valley pushing in. I'm just going to call them Yellow and Yangtze. North China is really trying to help out, but they're also trying to push back a Chinese invasion, as China's military is split between these guys. But at this point, West China actually kind of stops their military going into China, which is really bad for the Eastern Front, because they think if they can get rid of the Western Front quickly enough, that'll be really good for them. However, something bad that happens is Filipino troops are, first of all, marching up towards Japan, as Japan isn't really realizing this is happening, as well as making a landing, taking the capital of North China, and kind of crippling them, so that West China needs to send more support. They barely take the capital back, but that's pretty much it. The Western Front is going very well, as North India has already pushed towards the capital of East India, and has also started getting rid of their coastline so that they can't receive any aid. While South Burma has been pushed back and lost their entire coastline, as Vietnam is pushing around to their capital, as well as has taken the other two major cities that were left in their country. And West China has also been doing a lot of work here, but mostly in North Burma, where the front line is starting to get pushed, as they have been forced to withdraw all their troops from North India, who has started chasing them into their own country and has surrounded their capital. Meanwhile, over here, China is doing really well, as the Filipinos have handed them all their territory and are focusing solely on Japan, getting very close to Kyushu. Japan finally notices them, but it's a little too late for that. And North China has kind of lost a lot of aid from West China, who's really focusing on the Western Front, and they will go ahead and surrender without the rest of their alliance wanting them to do that, as China will start the push into central Yangtze, and it seems like the Pink Alliance might win the Eastern Front before the Western Front can be won by the Purple Alliance, the Western Front is going more slowly, although the capital of East India has just been encircled, and this city has been taken. And Pakistan, while this is going on, by the way, is fighting against the Western War, so that's why Pakistan's not doing anything. These guys want to stay neutral desperately. But the rest of East India has finally fallen. However, North India is sending a lot of their troops to here, but they are able to help out with this, as South Burma has fallen and North Burma has fallen. While that was going on, the Philippines has made a landing in what island is this? In Kyushu, and very quickly takes the entire island, as a Japanese attempt to do the civilians executing the occupiers actually fails, and Japan is forced to start recalling their military from Sakhalin as well as from Manchuria in order to deal with this invasion, as they are able to land on Kyushu but not to take their former capital. And what's even worse is that the capital of Central Yangtze has been taken, but Central Yangtze is very ideological in a way, and they refuse to surrender until their government and country just don't exist anymore. So their capital has been moved to here temporarily, and they're hoping eventually to get out of this. But the capital of East India has finally fallen, which is allowing a lot of aid to start flowing eastward, as the entire Western Front is now attacking, and this is not good news for China. So the North Chinese government is not here anymore, or at least they are in exile, but China is losing very badly as their capital has just been taken, and the Philippines start needing to aid them, and they realize the Japanese campaign is not actually worth it, as they withdraw entirely from Japan and just hold Taiwan, instead funding China so that China can actually deal with this massive invasion. However, a lot of forces from North India and from Vietnam and from West China are all flowing into Central Yangtze, allowing them to retake their capital. As things have finally turned back around for the Purple Alliance, as Central Yangtze is doing really well, but that's because most of their troops aren't actually their own. They're allies' troops, but still. And the Philippines is struggling to help this campaign. Meanwhile, Japan is doing another thing, but instead of pushing for cities, they're just trying to slowly extend the front line, which means it's going more slowly, but they're much less likely to lose territory as they refuse to land back on Sakhalin. They think it's not worth taking. However, I did say that these guys are expert diplomats, and I was not wrong. I was not lying about that, as they will actually be able to convince West China to switch sides, which is just like throws everyone off. First of all, North Burma is liberated. A small portion of South Burma is liberated. China immediately is fully liberated. And what's worse for the Purple Alliance is that Central Yangtze is now on the defensive again because they no longer have a fresh supply of troops, as instead West China is invading into them. And Central Yangtze has all of their major cities lost, but again, they will never surrender. That's just their whole thing. They just will never surrender. So for now, they still exist, and they will continue to exist as long as they exist. South Burma, the South Burmese government that just got taken out of exile, desperately wants to retake their capital, and almost does, but they expend like a lot of forces on that, and it was kind of silly. Vietnam is now pushing into West China, trying to retake the war effort, and North India has to repush into North Burma, but North Burma is not very strong, and because West China isn't really helping them out as much as they maybe should, they're going to keep losing, as the South Burmese government will once again fall pretty quickly after they got revived. Okay, I just colored in everything either purple or pink. I mean, it's just so much easier to see what's going on in the war. This is so much better. With this, we can see that it makes a lot of sense that the purple front line would start getting pushed this way. However, these guys have absolutely no chance of survival, as Japan is pretty much completely on the defense. Japan is actually mostly completely on the defensive as Korea starts getting pushed into. And Japan has to kind of wait for their allies to do their thing, because their allies are definitely stronger, with Vietnam and North India being like two of the strongest countries in the world, and these guys being a collection of weak countries. Like, the strongest country in this war is Japan, and the second strongest country in this war is North India, and the third strongest country in this war is Vietnam. To be fair, those are the only three countries in the war that are unoccupied on the purple team, but like Vietnam is barely stronger than Mongolia and the Philippines, who are tied for fourth. But still, things are not going well for... I mean, East India actually would probably have been the strongest on their team. It just sucks that they were next to the second strongest country in the war. Anyway, the pink team is losing as Japan lands on Taiwan and takes the entire island, as the Philippines didn't really have that many troops there. And the purple countries over here are starting to get liberated, as the pink countries, as West China and North Burma completely withdraw, or just surrender, I guess is the word. Japan tries to make a landing in their colony, but it gets pushed back, as Japan is losing in Korea, and they basically just have to wait for their allies to help them. And I don't know why Hokkaido is a capital. I think they were a country recently, but they're no longer a country. But anyway, massive mobilization push by the northern countries in the Pink Alliance will start having them do well, liberating large portions of China, as well as pushing them back into West China. And I'm going to say that's the first half of this war. So let's go to the other side, as I'm going to color countries in based on their alliances, so we don't have to look at the alliances layer the whole time. This is what the Western War looks like. So there's a few things you might notice, like West Arabia might have picked the wrong team, as they are going to get pummeled by the much stronger countries around them that are all focusing on taking them out. West Sudan is also going to be invaded into, this time by the Roman allies, as Somalia is getting invaded into and absolutely destroyed by Ethiopia, being much weaker. However, their Arabian allies are starting to help them as Ethiopia gets to here, so they will be, at least for now, in the war. The Roman colony over here is not defendable, So Rome is actually going to instruct their allies to just let it fall, basically, as they instead want to deal with the continent of Europe first. And fortunately for them, Scotland will very quickly fall to England, as England has been stronger than Ireland the whole time, as they will try and fail to make a few different landings on Ireland. So for now, they'll just stay there. Andalusia, without enough support from Morocco and Carthage, who are both too weak to support them, Andalusia will start falling very quickly, having fallen within only a few months of the war. Croatia will start getting invaded into by both Albania and Rome, and very quickly they also will surrender, as it is now the Netherlands who are being invaded into. For now, they're holding back decently well. However, their colony in Sweden is going to fall very quickly to Scandinavia, as several failed landings on Copenhagen are attempted. However, in Africa, it's a different story, as Egypt is focused on getting rid of Sudan, as East Sudan is taken care of, West Sudan is being dealt with, and Ethiopia is currently being drastically invaded into, being forced to withdraw most of their forces from Somalia to deal with the massive invasion that's happening, as their capital is fiercely defended, but the rest of their country, especially the Kenyan parts, start to get taken. And their capital is almost surrounded before a genius, general, basically, will free up their capital, as well as making a huge march to the sea. But it doesn't really do much because the Red Sea is controlled by the Egyptian alliance, who then completely undoes that. So Ethiopia is starting to fall, but they're still in it. Mesopotamia is currently fighting a two-front war, as East Turkey is not really a match for West Turkey, and Mesopotamia is forced to prop them up, basically. Meanwhile, the Central Asian countries are starting their invasions into Mesopotamia, which they can't do too much because they have to defend against Pakistan, but they are stronger than Pakistan, so they're also doing a slight invasion. But this two-front war means that they're not really able to do much on either front, so they're kind of just defending. It was kind of a waste for them to join in the war, but it's too late for them to leave. Over here, England makes a successful invasion of Ireland, as the island quickly falls, while the Netherlands has started to fail, as they just can't do this. They're just too weak to defend against this many fronts. However, they're still managing to defend somewhat. It seems that the separate fronts of this war are getting consolidated, as Ethiopia has fully surrendered already. And the Netherlands, I feel probably will eventually fall. So their government flees to exile. And all of the governments have fled to exile, and they're currently still alive allies. The entire African front freed up, now that Ethiopia has surrendered. Their next target will be Turkey, because this is one of the few ground front lines they have. Actually, no. Their next target will be Central Asia, as they start pummeling Central Asia with ridiculous numbers of troops, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of troops, which is 1% of the world population. Ridiculous numbers of troops that Persia just cannot handle, especially with the Pakistani front also there, helping out a little bit. Central Asia is even more sparsely populated, so a special regiment of troops led by an amazing general will go around just taking all of the major cities, as most of the northern parts of Central Asia that no one really cares about will fall, and Central Asia's government is kind of starting to collapse, and Central Asia will collapse at this point so thoroughly they can't be brought back after the war, and Persia is trying desperately to prop them up, but it seems that all will be for nothing, as Persia has fallen. However, all is not lost for the Roman alliance, because a massive invasion has just been made into Carthage, completely taking Carthage by surprise and starting to liberate the Roman colony, which gets liberated very quickly, as the Saharan country is the main target, being invaded really quickly because they're so weak. Remember, they were supposed to control all of this white land and then lost it very quickly. That's how weak they are. As Morocco is struggling to defend in the west, and troops are having to march all the way from Persia in the east, while Mesopotamia is focused on dealing with Turkey because they have to. as they are pushing Turkey back a little bit and retake Cyprus. But Morocco is currently in the process of just completely falling. Their government isn't collapsing. Their government has already fled, though. As a small contingent defends the capital. However, a massive army from Spain is sent down and takes the capital as Morocco has fallen. And with this, things are going to get really dicey for the Egyptian alliance. We're going to take a break from that because we have the event that I was going to talk about that happens halfway through the episode. The Ashes, a country that hasn't been here for episodes, a country that hasn't been here for 1,000 years, a country that desperately wants its freedom, and a dynasty that has been in hiding for a millennium will emerge. The religion layer has, first of all, changed a little bit since the last time we saw it, becoming significantly more brown religion, despite the theocracy's attempts to stop it. So the theocracies are maybe a little weaker. But either way, all of the brown religion areas will immediately and quickly rebel and form, and this country is like completely gone. In fact, they are completely gone. So really what's just happening is this country is expanding massively and its capital is moving and its government is changing. They will move their capital to the old capital of West India, as West India is back. But they don't want to be called West India anymore. They just want to be called India. They will very quickly convert from a theocracy back to a monarchy, and they will start invading. First, they will start not really affecting any of the wars as they quickly clean up South India and Sri Lanka, erasing their capitals and ideologies, which are just both monarchies, off of the map. They will then begin their invasions, first into East India, and North India is getting like very scared by this, obviously, because North India is also a target of West India, and North India will hastily sign a deal with West India. First of all, West India immediately gets to annex all of East India, because why would North India care about that? And North India also agrees to give their western territories to West India, as well as their Bengali territories, as North India has been crippled by this and is no longer in like the top 5 strongest countries in their war. But Pakistan is also going to be crippled as they are the next target of West India, who is now just India. They start invading into Pakistani territory, and Pakistan, unlike North India, will instead try to defend against these guys, which will affect the West Indian War. But let's go to the Eastern War, because the Eastern War is about to get massively flipped into the Pink Alliance's favor, and the Pink Alliance was already winning, as Japan completely loses Korea, as the Philippines are able to retake Taiwan. But most importantly, this front is going to just completely collapse for the Purple Alliance, as it seems the Purple Alliance has completely failed. West Yangtze is pressured into joining the Pink Alliance, just to make it easier for them to start crippling the Purple Alliance, now that North India has been crippled. However, it's not that easy. It's never that easy, as a series of things will happen that are extremely bad for the Pink Alliance. First of all, a massive Filipino ship going from here to one of the Japanese islands. Basically, half their navy will be sunk by a storm. Korea will declare its independence and try and overthrow their pink team occupiers, as well as their Japanese occupiers. However, Japan will recognize their independence, which no one actually expected them to do, as Korea joins Japan's side of the war. And Korea will start helping Japan invade into these guys, having a ridiculous amount of motivation. Thirdly, some actually competent generals in Vietnam will start taking over and doing decently well over here. Fourthly, now that North India has reduced these people, a lot of people are starting to flee to North India, and North India is immediately recruiting them as soldiers and saying you can only move here if you help fight for us until the end of the war. And that makes North Burma and West Yangtze immediately fall. Then fifth, the entire government of Yangtze will collapse, forcing them to be occupied by their allies. Sixth, Japan will land on its colony over here and actually be successful this time, invading into the collapsed territories of Yangtze. 7th, Japan will retake Taiwan. That's just like a thing that happens. But they'll use it as a staging ground to invade into China, as the new extremely good Vietnamese general joins up with them. And the tides of the war have finally turned back in the Purple Alliance's favor, as they start liberating all of their Chinese allies. And things are just going absolutely abysmally for the Pink Alliance. But in case that wasn't bad enough, Mongolia just straight up leaves the war, which I can't really show, but they have. And with this, the remaining countries in the Pink Alliance will surrender, as the Purple Alliance has officially won the war. And I'm going to try and make it quick on the West as well, because this episode has been ridiculously long, and I still have a final event I want to do, as well as maybe some other things before then. And that also includes the peace treaty. So over here, things have started going even worse for the Egyptian alliance, as this has kind of changed the tide of the war. The Levant will fall, the northern tip of Egypt will fall, and Egypt is now having to defend themselves. India is continuing to push further into Pakistan, having taken their capital, as the Persian government will attempt to reestablish itself in the Persian capital and be relatively successful. However, one slight problem, they don't really want to be part of this alliance anymore, as Persia will officially leave and remember, the Central Asian government has collapsed, so I'm just going to do this. But Persia will officially leave the Roman alliance and start pushing back the Egyptians on their own, and they'll basically make a deal where everyone leaves, and this is really bad for Pakistan specifically, because now they have no allies, and Pakistan has kind of just been fully annexed into India. However, it's amazing news specifically for Mesopotamia. However, what's not good news is that the Nile has pretty much fallen, as the Egyptian capital has been taken and the Egyptian government flees, and they're the leader of their alliance, so that's really bad for them. And they're even starting to free parts of eastern Sudan, as Western Arabia has a troop landed on it, so their government can be reinstalled. And things are just going abysmally for the Egyptian alliance. However, one thing will happen that will completely change this. Without Persia in the Roman alliance anymore, it's really easy for Russia to decide who to join, as they join the Egyptian alliance, and just absolutely start pummeling into Estonia, completely destroying them immediately, and threatening Scandinavia into leaving the war. Then pummeling into the Netherlands to start liberating them, reinstalling their old government. And Scandinavia has left the war. I'll just call them white for now. But the Russian military proves to be ridiculously powerful, as within only a few years, all of this land has been taken. Western Arabia has been crushed, and Egypt is starting to get liberated. Their capital is liberated first, followed by the rest of their country. The Roman colony is starting to fail. Carthage has a rebellion or a revolt. As the Saharan country gets liberated, and Morocco gets liberated, as all red team troops have officially withdrawn from Africa, and landings are made on Andalusia that start invading into Spain. And with this, England will leave the war so that they can keep the war spoils in Ireland. So England has also left the war. And Russia, basically, who's the new leader of the alliance, Egypt is like Russia's vassal at this point. This is what's going to start to happen, as Rome doesn't actually fall, they surrender. Same with France, same with Spain. It's just cooler to watch this happen. But yeah, let's go to the other map and do a peace treaty. Then I have a little bit of expansion I want to do, because I feel like we should do some of that, and then I'll do the final episode. But basically, what I need to say is that I actually need to redo this. So Russia is basically turned Egypt into their vassal at this point, so they're the actual leader of their alliance. But the government of southern France is panicked as they flee to Brittany to try and keep doing the war, even after all their allies have surrendered. And Then, when Brittany is taken, they decide to flee to Ireland, which is still controlled by England, who is technically neutral but is willing to harbor them. But instead of fleeing to Ireland, their ship gets lost, and people think that it's sunk, but we'll see what actually happens to it. Okay, so now let's do the peace treaty. Okay, this is the Western Peace Treaty. Russia is now extremely terrifying. Russia changed their mind about and forced them to spit out Scotland and Ireland into two separate countries. Southern France, their government has fled, so they have a new government. Still a monarchy, though, and I forgot to give ideologies to two of these countries. One sec. So, constitutional monarchies and regular monarchies galore, as theocracy has officially been stamped out in the West, and now we shall go east to see what happens there. Remember that Central Asia collapsed, so Persia takes most of their land, and in exchange they have to give a little bit of land to these guys. Let's actually quickly look at India, because we just have a lot of ideologies to erase. And these guys are a monarchy once again. Okay, let's look at the Asian Peace Treaty. This is the Eastern Peace Treaty. A lot of countries are gone. A ridiculous number of countries are gone. But these two countries basically were allowed to convert to monarchies and keep existing. So that's exactly what they did. And Mongolia suffered very little punishment despite having been the strongest country on the losing side of the war, probably because they were the strongest country. The Philippines had not that much punishment, but it's kind of like embarrassing that Japan owns a random bit of their islands. Korea gains their independence. I said I wanted to do some exploration, and then we'll do the final event of the episode. So the entirety of New Guinea is discovered, as well as a little tip of Australia, as people start living here as well. And Indonesia will take some more lands on the other side of that dividing line I was talking about in the last episode. Like so. Becoming pretty much modern-day Indonesia. Some more lands are going to be discovered in southern Africa, because it's ridiculous how long we've gone without these lands being discovered. And so, in fact, this is mostly Cameroon doing this, as all of this land is discovered. And people started to, all of Africa is discovered. Madagascar should have been discovered a ridiculous amount of time ago. But people during the war, to try and trade during the war, were stopping in the southern tip of Africa, and they basically founded their own country there, which I will call South Africa for obvious reasons, as a new trading country is founded here, with a ridiculous number of major cities for how small it is. And they actually have a new ideology. Actually, no, they don't. They're just going to be a democracy. So a lot of Africa is there, and probably... I want every state to have an obvious ancestor, so if you guys are trying to make a chart or something, these guys' ancestor is Cameroon. It's mostly Cameroonian traders who founded South Africa. But let's go back to the main event, because it turns out the French royal family didn't just sink, as everyone had thought they did. Instead, they washed up, and they ended up on the Azores, which they found are now supposed to be owned by Galicia. And so they fled again. This time, they tried to land in Morocco, and they managed to land on the Balearics, but Morocco kicked them out, so they fled to Cape Verde. But Cape Verde kicks them out, or Senegal kicks them out, and this time they're trying to go to South Africa, but a storm washes them westward, and they discover Brazil. They come back to Senegal, and they're like, hey, there's this entirely new continent out there. And Senegal doesn't do much with it, but the old southern French country has officially established itself where else but in Brazil, with one major city popping up of pretty much it was just these boats of people. So it's not actually the threshold for a major city, but it will become the capital, as a large number of people will actually move here to try and get away from all the chaos of the old world. However, they don't realize what can of worms they've just opened, as all of the countries of Europe have just heard that there's 2 new continents out there to explore. West Africa wasn't very interested. Europe is. And for one last thing, these guys will obviously be a monarchy. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.